Yeah, let's go.
Welcome everyone to the spring 2019 edition of Deep Thoughts with Big Men. I'm here with Coach Nick. We're going to be discussing programming over the next 6 weeks. You will consistently see this video coming up every 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks, depending on what cycle we're in, to break it down and educate you as to what it is that we're doing with the programming and answer any and all questions you might have. Thank you for being here, Coach Nick.
Welcome TJ's community. So the first thing that we've got to talk about when we approach programming is where we are, right? It's a roadmap. We got to figure out where we are on the 101. So to start the year, which is the end of the Open, we have 3 different macro cycles. When I say macro cycles, they're the big focus every 3 months for the entire year. And those macro cycles start off with a strength and aerobic base focus. We go from an aerobic base and strength focus to a speed, and I would call it aerobic power focus. And then continuing with that third 3-month cycle, we go to more of an Olympic lifting and lactic focus, all the way to that third and final 3-month macro cycle, which would refer to as our competition cycle. And that would be right before the Open. Because again, we are treating you guys like athletes, and athletes peak for a certain time of the year. That time again being the Open. So where are we specifically right now? Well, we're 6 weeks removed from the Open, which puts us smack dab in the middle of, like I said, that first macro cycle, okay? So again, what are the focuses for this 3 months? It's building strength and aerobic base. So we are starting, and I get that we're using some technical terms here, the second mesocycle of that macro cycle. We're going to be focusing a lot on bending, pushing, pulling strength, and a lot of monostructural aerobic movement. So rowing, airdyning, biking, running. So why do we focus on strength and aerobic base to begin with? Well, they pair really well together. Aerobic base doesn't have a major negative impact on building hypertrophy, building size, and strength in the bodies.
And
now,
once again, we're taking into account, as we do our programming, obviously with the macro cycles, we lay the school year, as most of us deal with, on top of this whole thing. Like it or not, people tend to travel around the school year. So we're laying that on top and taking that into consideration as well.
So the next 6 weeks, we're looking at strength work. Our strength work is going to be focused on, as it always is, bend, squat, push, pull, right? The human body works in 4 different movement patterns. So we're not gonna have a huge change in what we typically do, but our focus for that is back squat, deadlift, and overhead press specifically. And you might recognize that as the CrossFit toe.
CrossFit in
toe.
years.
Yeah, so traditional powerlifting does a bench press, back squat, and deadlift, but as functional human beings, we find the overhead press has a lot more transfer to what you're gonna see in the real world, so that's why CrossFit and functional fitness gyms kind of have adopted that small change into the overhead press. So over the 6 weeks, we're gonna simply be trading volume for intensity, right? So what does that mean? We're gonna be trading reps for weight, and we'll be utilizing some tricks up our sleeves. So maybe for 2 weeks, we'll do pause variations of these movements. 2 weeks, we might try to pull a little speed out and do 1 1/4. And in the final weeks, we're gonna really try to pull as much strength out of the body as possible, and we'll give you the freedom to choose whatever tempo works best for you, because we know that there are really 2 types of lifters out there. And if you have any interest in knowing more, please talk to me. I'll probably talk more than you want about it. But we've got what's called elastic lifters and power lifters. People who move slow, I'd call them tractor lifters, right? You know, the person that gets under that bar, and it doesn't matter if it's 75% or 100% one arm, they're moving the same speed.
Tempo. There's always a tempo.
Yeah.
They're moving through life, economy of motion.
And then you have the elastic lifters who utilize what I would consider myself bouncing out of the bottom a little bit on the squats, taking a little faster the eccentrics, just as long as it's controlled.
Let's talk a little bit about where we're going with these 6 weeks. So we're talking about having a tester portion,
Right.
To our final week.
Right. So we are going to be testing 1RMs for the back squat, deadlift, and overhead press, but I want to restructure everybody's thinking about what a 1RM is and what it takes to just have a successful 6 weeks of getting stronger. Doesn't have to be a true 100%, flat out lift. No. Really, when you look at progressions, it's taking somebody from A to B. So wherever you start, you just got to end heavier. So if that means that you start a little bit more submaximally in that first week, if you just put weight on the bar, more weight each week, you win. Doesn't have to be a true 1RM, it's just got to be heavier than you did in the 5th week on the 6th week. And then as far as the aerobic part of it is concerned, because we just kind of went through the strength part, we're really going to be focusing on 3 tiers of aerobic endurance, okay? And so you have the first tier, which is the lowest skill level. Any human being should be able to do this. You've got monostructural movements, so rowing, riding the bike or the airdyne, running, and then to a certain extent, anything that's very cyclic, so stand-up paddleboarding, things of that nature. In the gym, we're going to be focusing on at least one big workout a week that utilizes 4 of those movements. So monostructural, very repetitive, and it's going to get you going for maybe 12, 15, 20 minutes at a time. Again, very low skill, but it's going to have huge benefit for those higher skill workouts going down the line. So the second tier, I would coin skill-based. So what's a good monostructural exercise that has a little skill in it? Double unders, right? And if you can
Some people just cried when you said that.
Yeah, so people just put their head down. So you can apply that aerobic power that you create on the bike to double unders, but you've got to get that skill down for it to actually transfer.
Right.
And then finally, the third tier I would call an athlete performance tester. So that's going to be CrossFit. We are a CrossFit gym, so we do CrossFit testers. And like I said, that cascade of events here, getting a larger aerobic base with no skill to skill is going to totally transfer to those CrossFit aerobic testers. But the one thing that's going to really be critical in those CrossFit aerobic testers require the human being to have a good aerobic base, not only require that person to have a good amount of skill, but also pacing. You have to know what movements are going to do what to you, and everybody's kind of different. Some people can get on the wall ball and rip out 100 wall balls nonstop, but then they get crushed for pull-ups. And some people are completely the opposite. So you have to go into this 6 weeks kind of figuring out where you fall in those categories of movements. What are you good at? What are you bad at? And we're always trying to make everything better, but you can totally make huge improvements on workouts just with a goal. Hey, I'm going to really crush these pull-ups. I'm going to really crush these wall balls. I'm going to make them look perfect. Okay?
So we also have to remember what we know is that we are kicking you guys out of here come summertime. Well, you're kicking yourselves out. So what that means is that we're trying to set up with a good base for you to go out into the world and get some stuff done. You should be able, with this monostructural work, to say, do a workout, sounds terrible, 100 burpees, okay, for time. Or go out and run that 5K unbroken, or go out and be able to do workouts that you can do out in the world with this base. It's why we set it up at this time. It's a little easier on the joints, a little easier on the body, getting ready to move out into the world so you can, I don't know, maybe even go on an adventure hike or something like that. So that's another reason that it's timed at this time of year.
It's a great opportunity to, like I said, jump on the bike and go for a ride. If you're on vacation, do 100 burpees for time. Bring your rope along, get some double unders done. It's a perfect time to, like I said, build that aerobic base. You don't need a lot of equipment. You can do it anywhere. You're in Hawaii, stand up paddleboarding. It's a great opportunity to, like I said, build that aerobic base. And the last thing I want to talk about as far as this is concerned is, and we're going to go back to that thing that nobody likes to talk about, double unders. I think you have a couple of words to say about double unders.
Absolutely. So look, we talk about it all the time. You don't get better at certain skills, they start out as a high-level skill and they become a common skill by doing them in class, by just doing them within the workout. You got to spend some time on these. What we're going to do is we're going to expose that weakness with the double unders as they come up over the next 6 weeks, with giving you the opportunity to come in a little early, stay a little late, grab some eyes with a coach, ask for some help, and hopefully have you have the ability to walk out of here in 6 weeks and say, this summer I'm working on these things, I'm going to come back with double unders, okay? So we'll probably be doing that around break time when we have time to walk away and work on a skill that you can work on rather than snatching or something that requires a heavy barbell. So keep that in mind.
right, guys. So look forward to seeing you in the gym. Remember, big points of this 6 weeks. We're getting stronger. We're getting more aerobically fit. And we're using movement patterns that we find out there in the real world, squat, bend, push, pull. And big focus for that aerobic capacity is monostructural, kind of flowing through. Monostructural, low skill, high skill CrossFit. So that's what we're going to be experiencing.
Big week coming up in 6 weeks, big tester week. Be consistent. Be consistent.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Nick.